It was one of those cold, quiet nights that seemed to stretch forever. The kind where the streets are nearly empty, and even the streetlights feel lonely. Mark had just finished another exhausting shift, his shoulders heavy with more than just work. Life hadn't been kind to him lately, and honestly, he wasn't sure he believed in kindness anymore. As he walked down the dim sidewalk, hands buried in his jacket pockets, he noticed something that made him stop. A small, trembling dog stood near a trash bin, its ribs visible, its eyes filled with a mix of fear and hope. That moment, so simple, so small, was about to change everything. Before we continue, if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Welcome to Kindness Story Hub, where every story reminds us that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life. Mark had always been the kind of person who kept to himself. He worked long hours at a warehouse, came home to a small apartment, and repeated the same routine every day. After losing his wife 2 years ago, something inside him had quietly shut down. He wasn't bitter, just empty. He looked at the dog again. It didn't bark or run away. It just stood there, watching him carefully, as if trying to decide whether he was safe. Mark sighed and looked away at first. "Not my problem," he muttered under his breath. He took a few steps forward, but something didn't feel right. He stopped. He glanced back again. The dog hadn't moved. That's when Mark felt it. Not a loud voice, not a dramatic realization, just a quiet tug in his chest. The kind that's easy to ignore, but harder to forget. He reached into his backpack and pulled out the sandwich he hadn't eaten during his break. It was nothing special, just some turkey and cheese, but it was all he had. Walking slowly back toward the dog, he crouched down and placed the sandwich on the ground a few feet away. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. "It's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." The dog hesitated. Its body was tense, ready to run at any moment. But hunger is powerful. After a few seconds, it took a cautious step forward, then another. Mark stayed still, barely breathing. Finally, the dog reached the sandwich and began eating quickly, like it hadn't had a proper meal in days. Mark watched quietly, something unfamiliar warming his chest. For the first time in a long time, he felt useful. When the dog finished eating, it looked up at him again. This time, its eyes were different. Still cautious, but softer. Grateful, Mark gave a small nod. "Take care, all right?" He stood up and continued walking home, but something about that moment stayed with him. That night, Mark couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the dog. Was it still out there? Was it warm? Safe? Had it found more food? He tried to shake the thoughts away, but they kept coming back. Around midnight, unable to take it anymore, he grabbed his jacket and stepped outside. The streets were even quieter now. The cold air hit his face as he walked back to the spot where he had seen the dog. First, he didn't see anything. Then, from behind the same trash bin, the dog slowly emerged. It was still there. Mark felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. "Hey, you didn't go far, huh?" he said gently. This time, the dog didn't back away as much. It kept its distance, but its tail gave a small, uncertain wag. Mark smiled faintly. "Guess we're both a little lost tonight." He didn't have any food this time, but he sat down on the curb anyway. For a while, neither of them moved. Just a man and a stray dog, sharing this silence. Minutes passed, then something unexpected happened. The dog slowly walked closer and closer, until it was just a few feet away. Mark stayed still, his heart pounding slightly. The dog sat down. It didn't touch him. It didn't climb into his lap. It just sat there, beside him, and somehow, that simple act felt like everything. Mark exhaled slowly. He hadn't realized how lonely he'd been until that moment. "All right," he said quietly. "You can stay, for a bit." They sat together under the streetlight, the world around them still and quiet. For the first time in months, Mark didn't feel completely alone. Eventually, the cold became too much. Mark stood up and looked down at the dog. "You can't stay out here," he said. "It's freezing." He hesitated for a moment, then he made a decision. Come on. He started walking slowly, glancing back every few steps. The dog followed, not too close, but close enough. When they reached Mark's apartment, he paused at the door. This is new for me, he admitted, almost laughing. He opened the door and stepped inside. After a moment, the dog cautiously walked in. Mark found an old blanket and laid it on the floor. He filled a bowl with water and managed to find a few crackers in his kitchen. It wasn't much, but it was something. The dog curled up on the blanket, clearly exhausted. Mark sat on his couch, watching quietly. Guess you needed me, he said softly. Then, after a pause, he added, or maybe I needed you. That night, something shifted. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was real. The next morning, Mark woke up to the sound of gentle movement. The dog was awake, looking around curiously. When it saw Mark, its tail wagged, this time without hesitation. Mark smiled. Morning, buddy. He decided to call the dog Lucky. Over the next few days, things began to change in ways Mark didn't expect. He started waking up earlier, not because he had to, but because Lucky needed to go outside. He stopped skipping meals, because feeding Lucky reminded him to take care of himself too. He even started talking more to the dog. Yes, but it was more than he'd spoken in weeks. Neighbors began to notice. Didn't know you had a dog, one of them said. Yeah, me neither, Mark replied with a small smile, but the biggest change wasn't in his routine. It was in his heart. The emptiness he had been carrying didn't disappear overnight, but it started to feel lighter. One evening, about a week later, Mark decided to take Lucky to a nearby park. As they walked, a little girl ran up to them. Can I pet your dog? She asked. Mark hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Lucky wagged his tail and leaned into the girl's gentle touch. He's so sweet, she said. Mark smiled. Yeah, he is. The girl's mother approached and thanked him. Not many people take in strays, she said kindly. Mark shrugged. I almost didn't. That night, as Mark sat on his couch with Lucky resting beside him, he thought about that moment again, the night he almost walked away. If he had ignored that quiet tug in his chest, none of this would have happened. He would still be alone, still stuck in that same empty routine, but one small act of kindness had changed everything, not just for the dog, but for him. Weeks turned into months. Mark became a different person, not completely new, but more open, more present. He started volunteering at a local animal shelter on weekends. He smiled more. He talked to people. He even laughed, and every night, Lucky would sit beside him, a quiet reminder of how it all began. One cold evening, almost a year later, Mark found himself walking down the same street where he had first seen Lucky. He stopped for a moment, looking at the spot near the trash bin. It seemed smaller now, less lonely. He knelt down and patted Lucky's head. Funny how life works, huh? He said. Lucky wagged his tail. Mark stood up and took a deep breath of the cool night air. He wasn't the same man he had been that night, and all it took was one simple choice. To care. To stop. To be kind. As they walked home together, Mark realized something important. Kindness doesn't always come in big, dramatic moments. Sometimes, it's just a sandwich shared with a hungry dog. Sometimes, it's sitting in silence with someone who needs you, and sometimes, it's exactly what saves you. So if you ever feel like your actions don't matter, remember this. One small act of kindness can change a life, maybe someone else's, maybe your own. Or maybe both, and that's more powerful than we often realize. If this story touched your heart, take a moment today to do something kind, even if it seems small. You never know who needs it, or how it might come back to you, because kindness has a way of finding its way home.